Welcome to another video from Tailored English Online, where we offer instruction for professionals as well as young adolescents using Skype. My name is Rachel Watson and I'm a teacher with Tailored English Online, and this is my friend Alfredo Melendez, who is a teacher here in Hong Kong. And our topic today is typical mistakes that native Chinese speakers make when they start learning English. We're going to start off with a section on pronunciation.
Very commonly, we hear challenges between pronouncing the letters R and L, like class or crass, play or pray, dairy or daily.
Okay, yeah, and this is about the way that we bring the tongue to the top of the mouth. When we make a liquid R sound, which is the common R in English, you're actually going to bring your tongue close to the top of your mouth but not actually touch. And that's how we get something like pray and dairy. In contrast, when we make an L, the tongue comes to the top of the mouth just behind the front teeth, and there actually is contact. There's a short break as we aspirate, as we blow the air out. And that's how we get something like class or daily. Next, we're going to talk about a few common grammar errors that Chinese speakers make when they're learning English.
When Chinese speakers are talking about things in plural, words that are supposed to end in S don't have the S's pronounced. So, going to buy egg, or I would like to have many car.
Yeah, so just totally leaving off the S, which marks a plural in English. One of the reasons this can be confusing for Chinese learners of English is that in Chinese there is no equivalent way of marking a plural noun. So it can be tricky to remember that they need to distinguish in English between one egg and many eggs, or one car and many cars. What about verbs?
Well, there are sometimes difficulties using present tense with a time adverb.
In place of actually conjugating the verb. Of course we can use present as long as that's the verb tense that we mean to use. The problem is that sometimes we hear things like, he come yesterday, or I go later. Because in Chinese there isn't a whole system for conjugating verbs, they actually can say the verb, use a time adverb, and it's clear when they're talking about. But in English we're very preoccupied with when. So we have a lot of different tenses that help us understand the time of an action, the time related to another time, when something was completed or if it's still ongoing. So you can expect to spend some time, if you're a native Chinese speaker, learning all of those verb tenses in English.
Gender, and I think that's much more of a matter of practice, distinguishing between he and she. I've noticed this happening very often when a non-native speaker is hurried when they're discussing either a male figure or female figure next to them. They'll confuse he and she often.
And I think it's not just he and she, but any of the third person pronouns. There can be confusion between him and her, his and her as well. And once again, it's just because in Chinese you don't have the same way of making that distinction between a male gender in the third person and the female gender in the third person. So it's, again, a new habit that has to be built for speaking English. All right, another one?
Forgetting articles or using the wrong articles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we see in plenty of other languages. When you are coming from a language that doesn't use articles, it can be really tricky to remember. Okay, do I need an article? If I do, which one? And, the. So hopefully we have a video coming soon where we can unpack that further, but it's definitely something to watch out for.
And also confusing prepositions.
Yeah, again, huge problem for everyone. I mean, the big problem is that although most languages have prepositions, we all have our own logic about which one to use where, and you absolutely cannot translate. Just because there might be a correspondence between a word that you use in this sentence in your language and in English doesn't mean that every time you use that word, we're also going to use in. So, have to learn the English logic for prepositions. Alright, we're going to move on and talk about a few specific points of vocabulary or expressions that Chinese speakers often mix up when they're speaking in English.
Did you take a lunch?
Well, we could say, did you take a lunch break? If we're speaking with a coworker, colleague, checking that they've had their time off for the day. Otherwise, more commonly, I think the expression should be, did you have lunch? Or will you have lunch with me? Something like that. Normally, when we speak about lunch in a general way, we don't use an article, first of all. And secondly, we usually use the verb have. What else?
I very like to go to the movies.
Yes. Okay, so very is a special word that can be a little bit confusing because it is limited in how we can use it. It's an intensifier, but it can only be used before an adjective or an adverb. So I can say it's very hot, or I can run very fast, but I can't say I very run, or I very like running. Very can only be used with an adjective or an adverb. Now, it can be used in combination with much plus a verb, right? So, I like eggs very much, something like that. If it's difficult for you to remember when is the right time to use very, you can also remember to use really with a verb, and then keep very just for adjectives and adverbs, because we definitely can say, I really like Hong Kong. What else?
Mixing whether or not to use to with in relation to go.
Okay, so we often see the confusion where if we're talking about an activity, we shouldn't use to. It should just be I go, and then the verb with ing, right? I go shopping with my mom on Sundays. We don't ever say I go to shopping. And that is an expression that I've heard a few times here in Hong Kong. But similarly, there's a confusion. We do use to when we're going to a place. So I would say I went to Lantau this weekend. We can't say I went to Lantau. So the rule is that we use go to and then a place, and just go plus an activity with ing. Go to the mall and go shopping. Another one?
He is difficult to learn English.
He is difficult. It is true that sometimes a student is difficult, but usually when we hear this expression, student is confused. We should be using an impersonal expression. It is difficult for him to learn English. He isn't the difficult one. It's learning English that's difficult, right? Another example of this would be something like,
She is easy to cook.
hopefully you're not planning to cook any of your friends, so you won't have to worry about whether they're easy to cook or not. Probably this person meant it's easy for her to cook, or she's good at cooking. Alright, Alfredo, thanks for being with me here today.
My pleasure.
And thanks all of you for watching. Remember, if you're interested in taking personalized English lessons on Skype, get in touch with us. Visit tailoredenglishonline.com, and if you contact us, you can get a free 20-minute lesson.